Okay, this is going to be a slightly different lecture because this is not going to be on any particular chapter. This is going to be a lecture on the midterm assignment. Now, we're going to have two assignments altogether, and I'll go over them a little bit more in detail here. I'll have one later on that'll a little bit more detail on the second assignment. Um, so this first assignment is very simple. First of all, I want you to understand the entire purpose of the assignment before you even begin on it. The purpose of the first assignment is to get you ready to do the second assignment, and that's it. That's your whole point. Um, so for that, I'll start with saying what the second assignment is. The second assignment is to write a research proposal. Now, we talk about research all the time. You can read about Watson, doing research on infants. You can see Pavlov doing research on his dogs. You can go online and find tons of cool research all over the place. We talk about it all the time. So you now get to propose it. You don't have to conduct the research. That would be a semester or two all by itself. It can be a very long process. But every research has problems. And so the second assignment will be to propose some research, to come up with some, and figure out how it's going to be done. Now, obviously, this has a lot of problems, and the best thing to do before you propose research is to read some research and find out how they did it and what the problems they had were. So that's your first assignment. And it'll be due for around midterms. I'll give the specific instructions online for exactly when it's going to be due. Send out the emails, all that good stuff. But what I'll do is I'll put up 3 pieces of research on Angel, and they'll have to do with developmental stuff, of course, and I'm choosing short ones. Most research articles are around 30 pages long. These are all around 10, so they're not too painful. And in the beginning of each article is what's called an abstract. This is about a paragraph, although sometimes a wordy paragraph, that basically says everything that they found in there. So at the very least, read all 3 abstracts for the 3 different articles that I post on Angel. And then decide which one you find more interesting. It'll say what the results are and what they studied, all that good stuff. The one that you think is most interesting, or even most similar to the type of question that you're interested in asking when you do your second project, your research proposal, and you'll basically read it and then basically give a kind of book report on it. I usually call this a critique, but I don't want people making the mistake that they're here to say what's wrong with the research, because there's nothing really wrong with any of this research. But I want you to talk about the different problems that they had. So if you read an article and you see, okay, well, this article only had, they had a very difficult time getting participants. They only had 5 people show up. Well, then that's a problem that you can discuss. You can discuss possible solutions to the problem. You can talk about, well, maybe this would be a way that they could get a better subject population. So this is what your first assignment is going to be doing. You're going to be reading an article, and you're going to be talking about the different sort of research problems that they had with that. Different things that maybe you find something they did do wrong. Just as a tip, nothing they're doing is horribly wrong. These are written by doctors, by scientists. They're then reviewed by other doctors, by at least 4 other experts. Not just any doctor, but an expert in that field is then sent to review this article. And then they make a lot of changes, and then if it's good, it gets published. And these are all published articles. Now, I do want to stress that don't worry about the numbers aspect. Understanding the statistics on this is several semesters in and of itself, just to understand what these numbers mean. They'll break down. There's a section called the results section, and they'll mention the numbers and then kind of say what it means. Then they'll really talk about the meaning of it in the discussion section. And when you do your research proposal, you'll have all these same sections. You'll have a discussion section and all that stuff. So keep an eye on how they organize these things. This is really a good opportunity. This is what it's designed to be, is an opportunity for you to see how they organize it, how they tackle the problems that they have so that you can replicate it in the future. And I'll have all these instructions up online anyway. I have a very detailed list of things that you can talk about in case you can't think of what to talk about. We're only talking about a 2 or 3 page paper here. This isn't a novel. Now that said, this is another case where I'm not going to dock you points for being wrong. I understand that most of the you're not trained scientists. Of course, most of the critiques you're going to have are going to be wrong. But I'll mention here a couple of things that people have a tendency to do or to say that are usually just wrong. One of the things they have a tendency to critique is the participants. They mention the participants, and I think this is because one of the things I have on my list that I post online is about problems you can have with participant selection. And so there's one article that I have a tendency to put up. I'm not sure if I'm using that particular article this semester, about Facebook. They're analyzing Facebook and seeing how people express their sexuality on Facebook. Kind of an interesting article. And like, I think around 80% of the people that they're only looking at college students here are white. I think it's even higher than that. And so a lot of people say, well, this wasn't a very good sample because they're not looking at any black people. Well, that's just wrong. It's just flat out wrong. Only because if you're going to critique the population, you actually have to look at it. And that's exactly what I'm looking for here. Are you actually reading this? Are you just pulling out an idea out of your backside to say, well, it wants me to talk about population. White people. That's easy to see. Well, there's too many white people in there. Not diverse. But when you actually read the article and look at it, you can see that that's not a problem in any way. They took a lot of care on their subject population recruitment. They looked at like it was a couple of thousand people actually, if I remember right. And then saw that they just recruited everybody that had a Facebook profile that fit these parameters. It's just the people that fit those parameters happen to be a whole bunch of white people. Maybe they were, one of the parameters was they had to attend that particular university. Maybe the university is mostly white people. Maybe white people were the only ones that were using Facebook at that university. They're talking about people that were expressing their sexuality. Maybe black people just don't express their sexuality as much as maybe the black people in that university express their sexuality elsewhere. It doesn't mean that it's not diverse. It just meant that the findings were applicable for that specific group. So when I ask you to look at something like subject population, look at how they're getting their subject population. Do you think that the parameters for this specific experiment, do you think the parameters they used for recruiting their population was good? Should they have not limited it to just their university? Maybe after reading it, there was no reason to limit it to their university. Maybe there was if everything was just online, why not deal with every university? If it's just online, why limit it to a specific age population? Was the limitation of the age population needed for what they were trying to test? In this case, it was needed for what they happened to be trying to test. But there's reasons why they do this. Maybe you could think of other things they can do. I can give you another example of an experiment where you might want to critique, and again, I use the word critique, not say what's wrong, but just talk about the different issues that they had to deal with, and whether or not they dealt with it right, or whether or not you would do it the same way, different issues to think about. During my master's thesis, I was studying racism and sexism. And I realized that there were some really bad measurements of racism and sexism. They're just awful. And I didn't know how good they were. So my entire project was to give people 7 different racism and sexism inventories to see if the inventories themselves even lined up. So really, I really wasn't even measuring their racism as much as how effective the measurements were. And one of the issues that came up as far as subject recruitment went was whether or not we should have black people take the racism study and women take the sexism questions. Because each person was just going to be assigned to one group, so I could limit it fairly easily. Um, and you know, that's a whole issue to discuss right there. Should black people be tested in the same way that white people do for prejudice against black people? Should women be tested the same way that men are tested in prejudice against sexism? Ultimately, my advisors took a view that now, as I'm more learned, I just don't agree with. They said that women should be tested in the sexism category, but blacks should be excluded from the racism category. Which ultimately was a shame because we found some fascinating things with women and sexism, and we weren't able to find anything with blacks and racism because my advisors wouldn't allow me to even test that subject population. So that's the sort of thing that you're going to want to look at, and keep in mind this is all to prep for your own research that you'll propose. So these are all issues that you're going to have to deal with yourself. Feel free to email me. I know everybody's going to email me on things. By all means, if you want to know specific questions or specific answers for things, that's what I'm here for. And obviously, this assignment is a decent assignment. It's worth about 10% of your grade, so everybody wants to get it right. Here's a very important aspect of this. I will be accepting submissions for 2 weeks. Okay? And that's it. I will accept no late submissions. I will open up a Dropbox on Angel for you to submit your assignment. If you do submit your assignment, and you submit it really early, then, you know, so there's at least a week to go. I will not do this to anybody in the last week. If you submit it early, then there's a decent chance, not guaranteed, depending on how many I get, but there's a decent chance that I will be able to review it and then send you back advice, revisions, thoughts, ideas, that sort of stuff. If you do this, and I can get to it, then it guarantees you a better grade, because I'll say, well, these are your problems, you can then fix your problems, now your paper has less problems. You've got nothing to lose. If you put it off till the end, there's absolutely no way I can help you in this regard. I will also be putting up an example paper of a paper that somebody did. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do this with a critique or with the research proposal. I believe I'll be doing this with a research proposal. I may be able to do this with a critique as well. I don't know if I have a sample paper. Obviously, the sample papers that I use have to be student ones, and I have to get permission to do it. They have to be from previous years. So I don't know if I'll be able to do that. But by all means, go ahead and submit it when you can. Ask me questions, and submit it as early as possible. And like both the assignments are going to be, you can submit it as many times as you want. I will take the last one, not the best one. I will only read the last one if I get them all on the same day. So that when that Dropbox closes, it's over. 0 late assignments. This is one thing that I want to stress, and I want to stress this with any sort of online tests we may take, anything like that. This is the drawback of putting something off till the last minute. If you put this assignment off until the last minute, because I allow it to be open for 2 weeks, you know what? Computers go down sometimes. The internet goes down sometime. If this thing is due Saturday night and you work like a dog all Saturday, you put 20 hours into this, and then your internet goes down and you can't submit it until Sunday, you get a 0. That's not an acceptable excuse. You put it off until the last minute, and then something would happen. You know, surprise, surprise, things happen. Then it just sucks. There's nothing I can do about that. The same thing goes for if you have to take an online test. I get people literally emailing me at 11:30 at night. when the test closes at 11:55 saying there are problems with my submission. Well, I'm in bed. I can't do anything about that. You put it off till the last minute. Don't do that. If you're going to be up that late at night, do it the day before. I mean, I hold the test open for 24 hours. Do it the day before at 12:01. Start it then. If you're going to be up at midnight anyway, do it then. Just don't put these things off. So enough ranting about that. Any questions? Feel free. Let me know.